Transformation Talk Radio.
And we are back to From the Heart Radio with Elizabeth Cuckson and my guest today, Dr. Annabelle Charbit. And here comes the sun. I have to tell you guys, I am remote today from sunny Florida. And so what a better song to bring us in and to cheer us up. We're talking about, are you dating a sociopath?
That's great.
Oh, my goodness. So, yes, we are quite deep, and I just can't wait to get a little bit deeper. So this is somewhat difficult to even think about what this could be like. And I saw one of your videos online. You have several YouTube videos, which I would totally recommend people to go out and take a look. And that's Dr. Annabelle Charbit. Go out to YouTube. She's got some awesome videos. And one of the ones that was interesting was the one that you interviewed people on the street.
Yes, that was really...
And yes, tell me about that. What possessed you to go do that?
Well, after reading and discovering that there is such a high incidence of sociopaths in society, 4% of us are sociopaths, I said, well, I mean, it's obvious that we've all encountered one, whether we're related to one, married to one, dating one, sit next to one at work. Everyone has encountered a sociopath. So I said, right, let's go on the street with our camera and see what the stories are. And we got some great stories. And if we have a chance to talk about some of the points that make a sociopath, you'll see that in the YouTube video, every story that's described actually checks one of those boxes. So whether it's the guy was a compulsive liar, or he was manipulating, or he blamed someone else, or he had a sub-story, they all had a story that checked one of the boxes of the sociopathic checklist. So that was an absolutely fascinating and successful day out.
Oh, and it was really enlightening, because I sat there and watched the gal who, had this story of giving money to her boyfriend's dad or something who was sick or needed money or something like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I did that too.
Yes, that's actually your average con artist is a sociopath. So, I mean, those ones are so easy to spot. But we do it because everyone has a sub-story. Some people might genuinely have money issues. And it's not because they're parasitic or sociopaths, but maybe this year was a bad year, but overall, if you look at their history, they're okay people. But with sociopaths, you'll look at their history and they've always had money issues. So it was interesting. Yeah.
And it's not even so much they just had money issues. They just have issues.
Oh, absolutely. You wouldn't believe the amount of people now who use cancer. This is one of the sociopathic traits. They come up with fantastic sob stories. And there was a woman reported in the news a few weeks back who decided to say she had terminal cancer to get friends and family and even strangers to give her money for her final wish, which was to get married. And anyway, she was caught and sentenced, but that is a sociopath. So, I mean, if you can do that, if you can look people in the eye and say, I have terminal cancer, give me some money, you're not morally normal.
Well, I have to ask a question. Okay, so you say they look you in the eye. So if I have a sociopath standing in front of me and they are looking me in the eye, do they, because you talked a little bit about how their brain is not necessarily functioning at full capacity, right? And it needs to be more developed. Is it true then that they're not functioning at I want to say a human level that has the empathy and truth? Or do they believe they're telling the truth when they tell these stories? Do they actually convince themselves they're real?
I think that they don't care. So they're very manipulative. So everything that they say and do, it's never their fault. It's your fault. There was the rapist not that long ago who pleaded in court that his victims made him do it. It was their fault. He was the victim. That's a typical sociopathic reaction. Does he believe he was the victim? On some level, probably. But it's not even that. He doesn't care. He doesn't even care how ridiculous it sounds. He's going to use that argument on the off chance of getting away with it. And sometimes an argument is so ridiculous that people do get away with it. And that's what's very frustrating.
Well, I have to, so let's, so I do know teenagers even like this. Definitely, I've got a, older son, and I can share with you there are definitely characteristics that you're mentioning that I've definitely seen in several children. And is this something that is becoming more common, or is this something that's just been around and we're now realizing the characteristics? And what can we do for these kids? Is there anything that we can do? Not even just kids, just people in general. Is there anything we can do as family members to help them?
Well, so in terms of whether there are more sociopaths than before, probably not. It's probably always been the same, but we're just more aware of them, especially living in organized societies with laws and internet and systems where scammers just become more apparent. Can we help them? Well, we have to remember it's a biological condition. So if they reach adulthood, the longer they've suffered from the condition untreated, as with any mental condition, the more ensconced it is in the brain, the harder it is to change it. That's why at the moment there are researchers who are trying to diagnose children as young as 5 or 6 years old, not to scare anybody, but in the hope that if they can catch these children that young, they may be able to help them. They're not quite sure how they're going to help them because it's very new science, but they're thinking of therapies with which to help them. And they're going to hope. I mean, medication doesn't exist for sociopathy. It's really hard. We're dealing with underdeveloped areas of the brain. So it is really hard. Obviously the prisons have a much higher percentage of sociopaths, and those guys just reoffend. Who's ever rehabilitated? It's rare. So
this is really interesting. So we have a higher population in prison. We have a lot of people who are obviously stealing and trying to get money and preying on people, to get things that they desire and they want, and it doesn't matter at whatever cost, they're going to get it. So now they're in our prisons, right? And so I guess, you talk about having this biological, disorder, if you will. Is there something that they're connecting? Is it something the mothers have had maybe or is it something genetic that's coming down? Or like we did talk a lot about, their environments, which that totally makes sense to me. I can totally see somebody who's been, beaten or made to feel no good, and maybe that's why part of the brain doesn't develop. Is there really a medical reason that the brain doesn't develop, or does it just fail to thrive?
I think as with any mental illness, there is a genetic effect, genetic influence. So you do see families where there's a history of violence or time in jail or other unsocial behavior such as bank robbery or stealing or there is a history. So there are families where it runs in the families. There's a very interesting gene right now that's being spoken about called the warrior gene. If you look up warrior gene, you'll find it's linked to sociopathy, and it's actually deals with aggression and is found in people who are diagnosed as sociopaths. But then again, you could have warrior gene and come out and not display the symptoms, but it certainly gives these people a tendency. And obviously, if they've had a hard life, then maybe it will be expressed.
Wow. So do they ever turn it around, or are they just kind of, I don't understand, menace in society, but do they just continue stealing, until at what point do they hit rock bottom, or do they? Because they don't really realize there's a rock bottom.
They don't, because as long as they're incapable of experiencing the world the way we do, we are always going to be prey, they are always going to be predators. Their aim in life is to dominate us and to get what they want. They suffer a range of emotions that's very narrow. At one end of the spectrum, you have extreme boredom. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have the desire to dominate. And that's it. If they don't get what they want, they experience frustration and boredom. If they do get what they want, then they experience some kind of reward from that. And that's about it. And I think a lot of them, they go through life exploiting. They power through hundreds of relationships, and they probably, from what I've read, they either die alone. Some of them actually commit suicide from the boredom.
Wow. It just kind of seems, I don't want to say it just seems so depressing to even think about this group of people. And I definitely want to talk a little bit more about OCD here when we get back from commercial. But let's chat a little bit offline and talk about how we're going to bring up our next topic, because I really think there's so many people out there going, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? And I really want to give them some sound advice and some help in case they're in a relationship or they have a family member or they have been a victim of, one of these sociopaths and what they can do. So you guys are listening.